Previously, we spoke with Vikrant Bhan, Chief Data and AI Officer at Nestlé. As we move into part two, let's take a look back at some of the key highlights from that episode.
What I'm doing is I'm the head of analytics, data, and integration. I manage three things, basically. I'm managing all the enterprise platforms on analytics, on integration, on master data management, on AI, automation, etc. I also am delivering the data fabric or the enterprise data for the company. And thirdly, I continue to deliver AI products and services to functions, categories, zones, as well as markets. So a lot of early emphasis on commercial analytics, things like revenue growth management and all the NRM family of use cases like price pack architecture, trade spend optimization, recommendation engines in all the different sales channels, including e-commerce. So if you are starting as a chief data analytics officer in any industry, I think the challenge sometimes is like you can potentially go and spread yourselves too thin. So having the focus at the beginning on going after something which will be very easily measurable and impacting the top line, I think is a key learning that I've had. I think AI adds a very unique dimension there, especially the agentic AI, because if you can imagine now, a process like idea to launch could be a combination of steps that are happening still with humans in a market, humans in a shared service, but at the same time augmented by many assistants and agents, and the orchestration of all of that across the end-to-end.
This is fascinating, and for my CDAO colleagues, the key takeaway for me is just don't jump into the agentic bandwagon without rethinking where you really want to focus from business systems perspective, map those down and prioritize, right? Like what Vikrant is doing. Vikrant, I have heard scale from you a few times. This is a place where many of our colleagues are probably not finding the level of success that they want, right? So we did this extensive study last year. We published that it's called a State of Data for AI. We published it a couple of weeks back, and on the back of conversations with 150 plus CDAOs, data AI leaders, and backed by some 20,000 hours of research, few things started abstracting. One was across the board, different industries, different companies, aspiration is there. Everyone wants to disrupt in some shape or form their business with AI, right? The level of aspiration might be different, but aspiration is there. However, when it comes to delivering on those aspirations, there is a bit of gap. We found that only 14% of the cohort, entire cohort, we call them as front runners, were able to kind of, their foundations were commensurate to the aspirations. And we started kind of teasing out why, what is different and so on. And we started seeing that, okay, the business and IT alignment for those organizations is tighter. Second is, and probably this was one of the biggest kind of takeaways, was data readiness. For AI agentic use cases or family of use cases, far superior than the others, right? And given you bring this holistic 360-degree view in your role, and you have been spending a lot of time in getting the foundations right for AI, tell us, how do you go about this, and how are you ensuring that Nestlé scales AI?
Sure. So I think it depends a bit on the industry. I think some industries are by nature very fragmented, and they do data management through maybe a mesh type of a model, and it's more the centralized teams are working on policies and governance, and hence the domains are kind of managed in a way that the delivery still happens in different P&L entities and so on. We have been quite lucky that way, and at least me personally, I've been quite lucky because there's been this great work that has been done over the last many years on standardizing our ERP, as an example, on a common backbone, a common template, and this is not a simple thing. Yeah, I mean, I know in my industry there are many other companies are trying to do that with their core ERP. When you don't have that, like I still talk to some of my peers in my industry, and they have 15 ERPs, 20 ERPs, and if you have that level of fragmentation, it's very difficult to actually get the foundations right. There's no easy magic there. You have to
Yeah.
swallow the hard pill. Thankfully for us, we had a very pioneering program with Globe many years back, and I think something that was very good foresight from back then our chairman and CEO, and we were able to bring it into one single template. Now that is one part of it. The second is having a common MDM
Yeah.
system. So master data management and all your products, customers, vendors, and all the different parts of core master data being managed centrally in your enterprise architecture. So thanks to that, and thanks to some of these foundations, we were able to put together a strategy on data 3 years back, whereby we talked about creating what we call enterprise data domains within the company. And you can think of them as integrated data products,
Yeah.
which we are delivering centrally, because a lot of the common and mandatory systems of records are quite standardized as
Yeah.
well, and they're working towards a common MDM. So it's easy to bring it all together in the modern data management
Correct.
tools. Like, this could be Databricks, Snowflake, many other platforms out there in my peer group that they're using. And we are trying to build that over the course of last 3 years. And we've got to a very good coverage as part of that. The difficult part in our business architecture is always the front-facing pieces, because there the fragmentation is higher.
Yes.
And the standardization is not that great. So, but even there, you can still work to the aspiration of getting to common data models,
Yes.
if not to potentially one single standardized centralized lake. And this will never be complete. This journey is always going to go on, because this year we might have a scope and we think we've delivered 80% of the scope. Next year that 80 will become 60, because there'll be new data that is coming in, right, from machines and things like that. So we're constantly working on this as part of our data strategy. And hence, it's very important that your enterprise data domains, your critical master data, and the governance of that is well established in the company. And this we realized you cannot do by simply me saying it.
Yeah.
So we had to go to the board and actually get this mandated and validated. And it took us a few iterations to get it right, because it's not a topic that you typically discuss at a board level, right? But we were able to bring that visibility. And I think the entire company is now behind this, and leveraging these enterprise data domains will be quite key to make the scalability of the AI use cases. So that's a key foundation that you need to do. So I think on that part, we are well on our journey. And we also have the foundations of common systems of records there with MDM. I think the tricky part for us is the knowledge side. So AI is not just talking to your structured internal, external, and observational data.
Correct.
It is also talking to your knowledge layer. And I think we haven't cracked the knowledge part yet. And that's going to be, let's say, the next iteration. Because if you think about it, you might have an enterprise data domain on, let's say, everything related to procurement. And you would have spend data and vendor data and classification data, et cetera, et cetera. But then you also have contracts, and you have other kinds of unstructured documentation, which is there in the company, potentially not as well organized as our systems of records. So that's the next chapter that we are trying to also leverage the same data strategy through the unstructured data. We're not there yet, and we also need some help of AI actually to help us build the clean rooms, vectorize the data where it makes sense, get the right knowledge layer. And I think the layer to create the AI ready data has to be a combination of these two.
Correct.
On the structured data, I think it's easier for us now, because we just have to leverage our common metadata model, etc. But I think it's on the knowledge layer that we still have some work to do, because in the end, if I come back to the end-to-end processes, they will be a combination of knowledge-based assistants, agents, and your structured data, machine learning, and AI capabilities. So I think that's why, to complete that story with unstructured data, and in some areas synthetic data, because you just won't have data available, is also a very, very key paradigm. So
This is
keep
true.
working on that. But I mean, it can't just start. There's no simple shortcuts here. You need to have standardized templates. You need to have standardized enterprise data domains, and you need to also do a lot of work on the education of those.
Yeah.
Right? People are used to sometimes in the past working with data in different places, but then you have to bring all of those people. So if you're working on your data cataloging, marketplaces, education on how to leverage this data, I think that's very critical as well. Just
Yeah.
like any other capability, the education on data capability is very, very clear. So literacy of data is a key topic to also focus on.
Absolutely. A few things that struck me. One is we'll double click on talent, right, in a moment. But we have also been seeing that data and AI governance is kind of converging. The very thing that you mentioned, that for something to be ready for AI, we want the agents to not misbehave, but to
Yes.
behave within the guardrails. We have to think about the data preparedness also from the lens of knowledge preparedness, so
Yes.
that the system behaves, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Brings me to agent plus talent operating model. Quite a hot topic these days. And the fact that talent needs upskilling, cross-skilling. There's so much of euphoria around AI, right? People feel that it will change the world, but there's also an anxiety. How are you dealing with that? What does a future operating model for a data AI organization look like for you?
It's a very tricky question. To be very honest, I don't think anybody has an answer to what the future will look like. We are all kind of trying to make some changes that are making sense to our own journeys,
Yeah.
right? And I think one clue I can leave is you have to be fluid. Don't think of I mean, in the past, you used to have an organization structure. We did a product-based organization here in a data analytics, I think 8 or 9 years back, and we kind of thought, okay, this is now going to stay forever, right? Or maybe at least the next 10 years. But I think in today's space, the way technology is changing, the way everything is changing, the speed at which it's changing, one thing you have to be is fluid. So there's no magic answer in organizational structure that you have to be. I mean, obviously, some industries will be more decentralized, some will be more centralized. I personally think that the best is somewhere in the middle, and have the right hybrid depending on how the business operating model of the company is.
Yeah.
But then the other aspect here is there are different skills. I mean, the problem is to make this end-to-end process transformation come to life. It's not just data skills or AI skills. It's process skills.
Yeah.
It's lean value stream mapping. It's people who understand how to optimize things. And there are lots of different skills. So I think you need talent who is super agile.
Yeah.
Because even in data analytics or AI, you have to be constantly retraining yourself.
Absolutely.
So don't go after some magic answer on an operating model, because most likely by the time you have figured it out, it will change again. And also don't look for a magic answer on what kind of skills, because some skills will get commoditized. Some skills actually will get potentially automated, agentified. Yeah. So I think you will have digital workers at some point starting to work for you. I think what is key is the learning agility. Yeah. And the key is the fluidity in the organization structure. So we have made, for example, a very recent change where previously we used to have automation teams, which were separate from data and AI teams. And I'm talking here about robotic process automation and some of the old classical automation techniques, but then also some citizen automation. Now, if you think about it, you're trying to do end-to-end process automation. You have a group of people who are experts in AI and then a group of people who are experts in automation. Do you need two groups to be there? So one of the decisions we have taken, which is part of this fluidity, is how do you bring that organization together? And how can we now maybe shape it more across the end-to-ends and the process domains?
Yes.
So instead of learning about just the technology, which by the way, you have to do, because there's changes every day. I also struggle to keep up sometimes. But at the same time, you also need to teach these people about the process, about what is an idea to launch, what's an order to cash, what's a source to pay. Because they know it from their data and AI angle, but they don't know it necessarily from a process angle. And I think if we have to really crack this agentification story, you need to really understand what are the processes today and what are the reimaginations possible. And that needs creativity, that needs curiosity, that needs a lot of learning agility. So focus on that. I also would say uh, you might be a company which has a heavily internalized and less externalized, or you might be heavily externalized or less internalized. I think other key is you start understanding what are the roles that potentially the agentification will automate parts of their jobs the most. So we are, I would say, fairly externalized. So a lot of coding or let's say the junior level entry jobs that are getting impacted quite a lot from AI, they are actually with our partners.
Yeah.
Okay. So here it would be more for us, vendor management, to deal with the likes of you and explain to you that, what do we expect from our contracts? What level of productivity gain and automation do we expect is a skill that I need to have in my team, right? Which is a totally different skill from if you have all of these capabilities internally, then you have to start thinking about, okay, how am I going to move these skills into different kind of roles? What also you have to think about is if you have a business analyst, what's the future business analyst going to look like? If you have a solution architect, is it enough to be a solution architect in one area? Or do you now need people who are kind of assembly architects, who know integration, who know orchestration, who know automation, who know AI? They need to be a bit of knowledge across entire, because composability is going to be key in agentification. So I think there is a lot of questions you have to dabble with. So coming back to my earlier suggestion, fluidity in organization and learning agility in talent. This is
growth mindset.
Absolutely. These are the key attributes you need to look at. Don't think that there's any magic answer. At least I haven't seen. And I mean, I talk to my peer groups and CDOs. They're also going through a similar exercise. And I haven't seen anybody crack what would be an optimal operating model.
Absolutely. Well said. Thank you so much for that view. All this wisdom, if we were to package this into 3 takeaways.
I can ask Copilot to do that.
Not for now.
Not for now. So I have to put my Copilot hat on.
Copilot, no, we want the Vic hat on.
Sure.
And 3 things which the peer CDOs can take away. Just to tell you, there are quite a few new CDOs in the job. They would love to have your wisdom. So,
yeah, absolutely. And I might go back to maybe the journey when I started it in Nestlé. Obviously, becoming a data and analytics officer or data and AI officer, and sometimes people are just data officers or AI officers. It is overwhelming because the first thing is you have suddenly got all these different stakeholders who expect you to show results. So I think keeping that challenge in mind, the first thing, and I think I said this at the beginning of this talk, is go after some quick runs on the board and start building credibility.
Be a Sevag.
Exactly. Because if you do not have some quick runs on the board and you are spending a year or so just thinking about a strategy, the strategy can be worked in parallel, but you have to find some key sponsors and some key advocates within the key stakeholder community and kind of partner with them to show the results. I think that would be my first advice. And results, by that what I mean is true tangible P&L value, right? Like you have to show that you are making a difference to the company's results. The second thing that I would say is once you have cracked that, I think you can leverage those advocates and ambassadors to start cracking the rest of the stakeholder population. But at the same time, you have to constantly be in engagement with them on how can you teach them stuff. So sometimes I feel as a CDAO, you're not just there to be a service provider or an enabler. You almost need to sometimes take a trusted partner approach,
value partner,
a value partner approach, and I think you need to really earn that spot. So a lot of effort goes into spending time with your stakeholders. So once you have some runs under your belt, spend a lot of time with your stakeholders. Actually, I would say in my role, the maximum time I spend is in educating and spending time with those stakeholders. These can be your IT counterparts in product streams. These could be your functional business excellence experts. These could be your EB members, where you have to spend a lot of time with them.
And that would improve adoption as well, isn't it?
Exactly. And the third thing related to that is the language. We speak a language in data and analytics, which sometimes only we can understand. And these people don't. So you have to really learn a language which is outcome focused, results focused, related to that particular function or end-to-end process. And you're able to come back from that into the different building blocks. So don't go and tell somebody why data governance is important. Tell them that, have you seen the state of your brands and what does that do when you want to do a brand portfolio optimization?
Correct.
That would be the way to get the point on data governance, not the fact that we need data governance and stewards and catalogs and God knows whatever. So the language has to be very much focused on what the business stakeholders can understand, and you have to then do the job of slowly bringing them up to that speed. I would say those three would be the key. I sometimes say our jobs are more like chief diplomacy officers. So there is a fourth one, which is try to not create silos and try to connect the dots and be a bit of this diplomacy officer, because you spend a lot of time on that as well.
Fantastic. On that note and language of gratitude, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tanu.
Thank you so much for listening to us today. For more such conversations, I would like to invite you to follow us on Spotify, Wipro website, and all other social channels. Look forward to having more such enriching conversations. Thank you.